watched porn, it lit me up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
When I watched porn, that fog of depression that loomed over me my entire life lifted. When I watched porn, that anxiety that was so crippling vanished. I had this library of memories in my head that I can draw upon at any time to get high. And so dark sexual fantasy was like my drug of choice. I had nothing left. I had nothing left in me. And I'm a fighter, dude. I had nothing left in me.
Before we start this amazing episode, please subscribe. Please subscribe. Okay. Today, we're diving into a subject most people avoid, the quiet struggle that lives in the shadows, pornography addiction, and the shame that comes with it. For so many men, this isn't about sex. It's about secrecy. It's about numbing, pain, hidden in silence, and carrying a weight that they don't feel safe to share. Shame becomes a prison, and the screen becomes the escape. But here's the truth. Shame can't heal shame. Only courage, honesty, and community can do that. That's why I got my brother, Stephen Wolt here, CEO of Valor Recovery. His mission is helping men step out of the darkness, break the cycle, and realize they are not broken. They are human, and they can heal. Steve, welcome to the Seano Show. Great to have you on.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
That's good. Listen, before we talk about Valor Recovery, and we're going to get into that and your beautiful partner and your child, all the amazing, we got to go back a little bit because it just didn't happen overnight. Would you mind? So let's go back a little bit. Tell the folks a little bit about where you came from. And my God, I've been front row center for it. So let's share this amazing story together.
I'd love to. It's a fascinating story. It's an incredible story, and it's a beautiful story. And at the end of the day, it's a love story, which is the best, right? And so my name is Stephen Wolt, and I think as it relates to this topic and this conversation, I'm in long-term recovery from sex addiction, and it's so important for me to say those words. You know, shame and stigma make it so hard for men to talk about these issues, and men suffer in silence. And so my mission is really to turn purpose to the pain I've experienced in my life, and through the power of radical vulnerability, shine the light on this story to help others get more comfortable sharing their truth. And so I'm going to attempt to do that here for you and for your listeners. And so, I thought maybe we have a little fun with this. And, I take you back to a time in the late 90s. And I was in my mid to late 20s working in Midtown Manhattan and working in financial services and from all outward appearances, like killing it in life.
You're doing quite well, brother. You're doing well.
I was doing great. I worked my ass off. I don't come from means. So it was so important for me to kind of accomplish something professionally. And I did it, and I remember moving into my first apartment in New York City. It was on the 32nd floor of a skyscraper building. And it was a big deal for a guy like me, right? You walk in and there were floor to ceiling windows looking at downtown New York, the UN building, the Empire State Building. And it was this incredible moment of like, I have arrived. But I also remember a few weeks after moving in, getting the internet in my apartment for the first time.
Wow.
And for the first time, having access to pornography. And I'll tell you something, when I watched porn, it lit me up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
When I watched porn, that fog of depression that loomed over me my entire life lifted. When I watched porn, that anxiety that was so crippling vanished. And when I watched porn, that loneliness that was so pervasive in my life went away, at least temporarily. And, I watched porn to numb really, really uncomfortable feelings. And it really, really worked, until it didn't. And, things started to change over time. I started needing to watch porn with more frequency. I started taking more risk as to where I was watching that porn. I started watching my office on my work computer, which was insane. And, I started watching porn through all hours of the night until the next morning sometimes. I mean, there were times I would literally, in absolute disgust, I would take my laptop and throw it down the garbage chute of the 32nd floor because I'd been watching pornography the entire night and could not stop. I had told myself countless times, never again. I'm not doing this again. And, the resolve would be gone by the end of the day and I'd be back at it. It was hard, and pornography for me was very progressive. And, I started watching different types of pornography. I gravitated towards watching dark fetish porn, sissy porn, transsexual porn outside of my sexual orientation. Now, as a heterosexual guy, that was really hard for me to understand why I was doing this. And I had so much shame around this. I didn't understand why I was so attracted to this, why this was so intoxicating, and why I couldn't stop. And it was really, really painful. And, at that time, I was in a relationship with a really wonderful woman. And what I noticed over time was the effect pornography had on that relationship. Over time, as I got further engulfed in this porn and fantasy world, sex to me was no longer about any form of connection or intimacy. I turned my girlfriend into an object, and it was grossly unfair to her and to me because it really burnt off the nerve endings of any sensuality in this relationship and really affected both of our self-esteems. Pornography emasculated me because, over time, I couldn't get or maintain an erection during sex. I had been so desensitized to sex because of all the porn I was consuming. And then over time, I couldn't orgasm during sex with a beautiful, beautiful, lovely woman unless I was thinking about sissy porn or some insane thing I'd been watching the night before. I mean, there was this pornography it robbed me of my manhood. And so, my goodness, when you think about what it did, it opened up Pandora's box of repressed emotions that I sexualized. And, porn addiction, like most addictions, is progressive. And, it typically can get worse over time, not better if left untreated. And that was absolutely the case for me because pornography was a gateway drug. Pornography led me to strip clubs, led me to escort websites, prostitution. Pornography led me to a bunch of cocaine. And it really kicked off a horrific cocaine addiction. And I spiraled really hard. And in 2008, I got fired from that job. And I got fired publicly and being in a strip club. You remember that? And
Yep.
And with a bunch of drugs involved. Rightfully so. I should have been fired years before. And I wasn't. And, when I lost that job, I didn't realize that was the glue that was just keeping me together. I had so much of my identity tied into my ability to earn and perform. And when I destroyed my career and my reputation, things really, really fell apart. And I moved out to Los Angeles, figuring somehow, doing a geographic, you hear all the time in addiction. It was interesting at that time. I told myself, I don't know whether I'm going to live or die from this, but I certainly am not going to give my mom a front row seat for this.
Remember that.
And yeah, then I moved out. I met you early on in the process. And, when I think about recovery, I think about it really in three pieces. And healthy intimacy, healthy sexuality, and healthy masculinity. With healthy intimacy, the first part of this journey for me was I had to learn how to have an intimate relationship with myself. There was so much shame. There was so much self-hatred. and I was in so much emotional pain that I had sexualized. And so what do you do with that, man? And how do you heal from that? And, I went away to residential treatment, to a program that specializes in treating sex addiction and childhood trauma. It was a good experience for me. I learned about how the role childhood trauma played in my sex addiction. I learned about how I wasn't just a man with no morals or ethics, that I actually was, I had a disease or a medical condition that I was suffering from. I learned about sexual anorexia and, and some of the challenges I had in being in relationships because I had so much shame over where the disease of addiction brought me, and I learned about how the harms of pornography. And I think most importantly, what I experienced there, Seano, was I was around other men like me who acted out the same way. And maybe for the first time ever, I didn't feel so alone. And, I made the decision, to move out to Los Angeles. And I wish I could tell you that everything fucking turned out great after that. My goodness. I wish I could tell that story.
We're just warming up, brother.
We're just warming up. It got worse, and it got much worse, and I can't believe it could get much worse, and it did. And over the next few years, it got really, really dark. I got introduced to crystal meth and all of those shenanigans. I got tied into the West Hollywood escort scene and all of those challenges, and it got really, really bad. And the thing that's fascinating about that time was I was doing everything that was asked of me to get and stay sober. I was working with an addiction psychiatrist, taking medication for anxiety and depression. I was working with you as a therapist that specialized in sex addiction. I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings on a daily basis. I was going to Sex Addicts Anonymous meetings on a regular basis. I was doing the steps in the program, and I couldn't stay sober. The obsession and compulsion was so much stronger than me. And, for many years, I was this chronic relapser. And it was so hard to keep coming back, but I did. And, it's interesting, when I think about that time, man, I wasn't leading yet to sustained abstinence, but I was absolutely in recovery. When I look back at my today, and I look about those years, those are actually the foundation of who I am as a man today. That perseverance to never give up, that ability to keep coming back. I would leave emergency rooms with fucking wristbands from the hospital on my wrist and go straight to a fucking meeting, walking in there on my hands and fucking knees. It is in those moments where I found that power within me to persevere. And as painful as it was and as hard as it was, it has shaped and molded me into the man I am today. Yeah. And so when I think about that, man, and I think about all the fucking guys who helped me, I think about the power of community, the men in those meetings who loved me when I could not love myself, those men who welcomed me back with open arms time and time again, those men who invited me to their homes on the holidays when I had nowhere else to fucking go. I had such little self-esteem, man. I hadn't seen my family in years. Those guys, fuck, my goodness, they saved my life. They saved my life. I wouldn't be here today without those men. Heroes, angels. You never know the effect you can have on someone else when they're hurting, when you reach out your hand. And so, they helped me. They carried me. And here we are today. And it's such a beautiful story because my whole life today is based on how those men helped me. And so I didn't give up. I always joke, I could sell my newcomer chips back to the home office and retire. And yeah, we laugh about it.
Yeah, but
it's fucking brutal.
Yeah, many times your mom called me, have you heard from my son? and you play hard. I mean, you give your car up, you take a television off, you don't fuck around, dude. Steve, if before we go into Valor and your amazing recovery, I think it's important for the audience to hear that last episode, Ventura Boulevard, right? That was the last one.
Yeah, sure.
Can we do that? Can we? Yeah,
yeah,
that
sure.
was the last one.
It's dark. It's dark. Yeah. And it would, I'll tell the story. I went to my morning AA meeting, which I do at 7 a.m. almost every day. And, dude, old school AA is the best, right? I mean, you got old timers there, 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. I mean, just good stuff, right? Always leaving that meeting in a good, healthy place, saying the serenity prayer, looking in each other's eyes. Same thing with the group we have at SAA, dude. What a great way to start the day. And, I left that meeting. I drove to my office in Beverly Hills. And, at that time, I'm sure I had, maybe 4, 5, 6 months of sobriety underneath my belt, as I normally did at that time, and before struggling again, and complete resolve that day to stay sober. And I noticed as the day went on, I so struggled with using sexual euphoric recall to deal with emotional turmoil. Mm-hmm. And, so I'm at work and I remember, and all of a sudden by noon, I start recalling memories of past acting out experiences. In many ways, my mind was so diseased. I had this library of memories in my head that I can draw upon at any time to get high. And so dark sexual fantasy was like my drug of choice. I dealt with my emotional condition based on that kind of euphoric recall. And of course, I start doing the dance midday at work. And the problem with a guy like me is that kind of euphoric recall can take on a life of its own. Dancing with those memories can be dangerous for a guy like me. And so by the end of the day, with not talking to a guy in program, just playing with those thoughts, I mean, I'm drooling right now. And so here I am at the end of the workday, and dude, I'm ready to go back out. And so even after being in a really good place, I made the decision to go visit Candy Cox. I mean, you can knock that out, but there's a lot of people out there named Candy Cox, I would imagine, in the prostitute world. But you guys do what you got to do with that. Yeah. And familiar West Hollywood kind of place. And, it went there and did my dance of kind of porn and, acting out sexually and doing cocaine, and been there for a few hours and made my way over to another prostitute's place in West Hollywood, doing the dance again there with cocaine, now crystal meth. And it's on, and I ended up, after leaving there, walking the streets of Hollywood, what was for a few days. And which I did a lot, as you're aware of, because you scooped me up from a few of those walkabouts. And, I ended up in a North Hollywood in a crack den and smoking crystal meth and in the corner watching men have sex and broken up for days, not knowing where I am. And outside in the vestibule or courtyard, I hear a laugh. And, I don't know whether it was the drugs talking or what. I heard a little boy laughing. And I looked out the window, and a little boy was kicking a soccer ball with his dad. Fuck. And I watched him. And I sat back down listening to that laugh. And it broke me. The innocence of that laugh. How far had I fallen from any type of innocence in my life? And I remember a tear rolling down my face. And that warm tear against my kind of cold body, and more tears began to follow. And I just recognized where I was one more time. Thousands of AA meetings, thousands of SAA meetings, treatment, rehab, therapists, countless dollars spent on care. And here I was one more time, up for days engaging in sexual behaviors that are so demoralizing and humiliating, exposing myself to diseases, scaring the living shit out of my family one more time. I got up from sitting down and I left the apartment and I walked over to the father and I just said, I'm sorry. I'm sure he was scared. Like, what is it? I'm sure I didn't look very good being up for days. Thinking about what I was apologizing for, part of me thinks looking back, I was perhaps apologizing for the man I'd become. Or maybe I was apologizing to him that his son had to be so close to that darkness. Not really sure. I walked outside and, it was now rush hour. I made the decision it was time to end my life. What was the point? This is years now in the making. I really, really tried, Seano. I really tried. I gave everything I had to this. And here I am once again. How the fuck? I don't have another recovery in me, dude. I'm going to have to go to the emergency room. I'm going to have to go detox. I'm going to have to go back to residential treatment. I'm probably going to get fucking fired. I can't do this anymore, man. I'm too tired. And, I walked to the curb and I remember I had a conversation with my mom. And I just said, Mom, I tried. I'm sorry. This will be better for all of us. And I meant it. I really meant it. I had nothing left. I had nothing left in me. And I'm a fighter, dude. I had nothing left in me. And, I think about as I built up the courage, which is not really courage to take that final step. Right in front of me, a Ford Explorer hit another car and rolled on its side. Obviously shocked. I hobbled over to the car, and I say hobbled because I'd been up for 4 or 5 days, and my toes, I was wearing dress shoes, were kind of broken. I hobbled over to that car, and with another man, pulled a little girl out of the back seat who had been bleeding. I came to, shot of adrenaline. I had no wallet. I had no cell phone. I had nothing on me. I didn't know where anything was. I borrowed someone's cell phone, and I called my mom. And asked for help one more time. It wasn't my day to die. That's what it looked like at my bottom.
And that was how long ago, Stever?
That was 2015.
Right. And you've been sober how long now?
9 years.
9 years. 9 years, man. Amazing. And let's just get into this. When did you, before I talk about your amazing company, buddy, what's the one thing that you did differently this time that allowed you to stay sober 9 years that you didn't do before?
It's hard to answer that question because, the one thing I didn't do is I didn't give up. I just didn't give up. Through all outside appearances, you should give up. This ain't fucking working, dude. I just didn't give up. And so I did everything and I just didn't, I kept coming back. And, I just kept coming back. I just kept coming back. I just kept coming back. And then things started to shift. And then, it was this kind of beautiful journey of learning how to experience life. There was so much that I wasn't doing in life. This time around, I was actually able to begin to experience healthy sensuality and healthy sexuality. I was just able to, I started to date and sober date. And I started to learn how to have a healthy relationship with sex. I had to learn how to, these God-given beautiful instincts. And so much of this was transcending the shame that I felt that I was unlovable or inherently flawed or broken. And then all of a sudden I started to kind of get into a relationship and have my first sober sexual experiences, and then get into my first sober long-term relationship, and then my first sober breakup, and where I began to truly learn how to experience healthy sexuality. And what an incredible thing. And then that was just kind of the springboard for the life I'm living today.
And buddy, when did the idea come into your head? You know, you've always been a very savvy businessman, and when you're sober, incredible at what you do. Nobody can touch you, honestly. When did the idea come to start Valor Recovery? How did that all drop in?
Yeah. So, in 2018, I had this idea. I wanted to get out of my old career. It didn't give my life purpose. And I knew how to make money doing it, but it didn't fulfill me. And I wanted to find a way to do something in recovery. Not sure what it was, but I just felt like there was something, all these experiences. I've been to so many different treatment centers. I've been through so much. I have so much to give back. And so one day, this is a crazy story. One day I was in Santa Monica. My office was at the time, and my psychiatrist was in Beverly Hills. I had to block off half a day to go to my psychiatrist to renew Wellbutrin. So with LA traffic, it took me an hour each way. I spent $50 for parking. I saw the doctor for 15 minutes to renew Wellbutrin. On the way home, I'm like, dude, this is insane, man. Like, why did I have to do this? Why couldn't I just do what you and I are doing right now? And so I had the idea on why isn't telebehavioral health being used with behavioral health? And so I just started doing a deep dive around that. And it wasn't. The efficacy of it wasn't proven. Insurance companies weren't reimbursing for it. And so I had this, but the VA had been using telebehavioral health for decades with their vets. And they had all this data that it worked incredibly well. So I had this idea. I said, why don't I start a substance use disorder intensive outpatient program and do it all virtually? This is long before COVID.
Right.
And so I teamed up with an organization, Freedom Institute in New York. They've been around for 50 years in the space. I knew the chairman of the board from AA, loved the idea. We teamed up with it. Incredible idea. In market before COVID with a virtual IOP. Nobody was doing it. I mean, the idea, I thought, my goodness. Well, once COVID happened, the whole world kind of embraced this technology. And we did okay, but we just didn't have staying power. So we ended up shutting the business down a few years ago. And it was really, really hard. It was really hard for me. It was really hard. I felt so bad about myself that so much shame came up. Recently married, I got a family to provide for. I went all in on this startup, double down, triple down. There's no freaking way I'm going to fail here. And it failed. I said, okay, like now what? And now what? And, it really dawned on me. I wasn't able to have a liquidity event with this business or really find a way for it to be profitable for my family. But there was so much experience that came from launching a business and building a business and learning what worked and didn't work. And so that was the monetization, was those experiences. And then I started to think about when we were in that space, we were doing a lot of work with impaired physicians and impaired lawyers and in those communities. And I always felt this sense of imposter syndrome. Like, who the fuck am I, running this treatment center? I'm not a doctor, dude. I'm a business guy who's a recovering addict. I always had a hint. But as there was just one thing that I always felt so confident about. My knowledge and insights and vulnerability around my sex addiction. I always believed that I was on par with anybody that was willing to have a conversation around this topic. I felt like I knew it. This was the space I was meant to be in there. And there was one thing, these are tough topics to talk about, but the radical vulnerability about my story is something very special. And if I could find a way to create a business around that, where we can leverage this founder's story to help break down barriers for other men, it could be a great opportunity to change the world. And so that's what I decided to do. And so that was the driver behind that. The other thing that really always bothered me, you can go to AA meetings around the world and they're amazing. As you make your way to 12-step recovery around sex addiction, sex and love addiction rooms around this country, that is not the same. The rooms are empty around this country. The quality of the recovery is poor around this country. They're mixed meetings. The world we lived in Los Angeles, I mean, it's like the recovery capital of the world. Those S meetings are breathtaking. That's not what exists around this country. And so there was such an opportunity to bring additional resources around sexual compulsivity, sex addiction, and using a virtual platform, which I had a bunch of experience with that old prior company. And that was the thinking behind it.
Wow. And how long has it been in existence now?
We have been up and running for a little over 2 years. And we've worked with over 300 clients over 2 years. And we're growing and growing fast. And it's really, I've brought on what Valor Recovery does. It's a coaching and peer support system. And to really help men dealing with a range of challenges from porn abuse, sexual compulsivity, sex and love addictions, and intimacy disorders. And the mission behind Valor Recovery is to really empower men to learn how to experience healthy intimacy, healthy sexuality, and healthy masculinity. And so the uniqueness behind that is we are you. Right. And so there's something so powerful, and I'm not knocking therapy. I've done a lot of therapy in my life, but there's something powerful with one man talking to another man saying, me too. And so the psychological safety, the empathy, the bond, the connection of that shared life experience can be so powerful in helping to transcend shame. And so the combination of, community that we create, the coaching platform that we have, men are doing really, really well here. And we're so proud of what we've created. It's so rewarding, Seano. It is so rewarding. And you know it because you've been part of so many men's recoveries and lives when they transcend the things that are keeping their lives small. And so to be part of that experience is really rewarding.
That's beautiful, buddy. Congratulations. You guys do extra. It's nice to see Brother Theo Vaughn give you a big shout out. That was impressive.
Yeah.
Huh? That was great.
Yeah. He's a big fan of the work we do.
Big fan of your guys. He's a very big fan of your work that you guys do. I've got some questions for you, Stever. Let's get into it. Let me ask you this first one. Okay. Why is pornography addiction so difficult for men to talk about compared to other addictions?
There's so much shame. There's so much shame. We work with a lot of men that have very strong religious beliefs. And the shame they experience as it relates to their behaviors around their porn consumption is lethal. And so it is often misunderstood. It's something you do in privacy. Right? You're not watching porn with your friends. Come on over, guys. Let's come on and watch some porn out together. That might be fun tonight. You're not doing that. So it's something done in privacy. It's something done in secrecy. And it is shame-based for a lot of men. And I'll tell you what's really interesting. The recovery from it is so hard. Think about a recovering cocaine addict. If he had to get sober off coke, but he had to walk around with cocaine in his pocket everywhere he went, how hard would it be for that person not to do that cocaine? Well, what do you think it's like with your cell phone? So it's free, it's easy, it's accessible with a click of a button. And it's really, really difficult. I think for so many men, this is the hardest thing they'll ever have to do.
Beautiful. And Steve, in your experience, what are the hidden costs of porn addiction beyond the obvious relationships, self-worth, and purpose? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It's a, the hidden costs are interesting. A lot of guys don't think about this. And so I'm going to share with you like what we see when a guy gets 6 months, 9 months, a year away from pornography. You see a guy oftentimes get a big raise, go back to graduate school, launch a business. Like, what the hell does that have to do with you not watching porn? The answer is everything. Because what you're doing is transcending shame. When so many men experience porn and experience immense shame as a result of their porn consumption. And what that does is that feeds that narrative that they're inherently flawed. They see the world through the lens of shame. They make decisions based on shame. They have trouble believing in themselves. And so, the fascinating part of what happens when someone gets sexually sober, they get to see how porn has permeated every area of their lives. Not only their ability to earn income, their ability to show up for friends in a meaningful and profound way, to show up for colleagues, and so breaking free from the bondage of that is an incredibly powerful experience where men's lives can thrive. And I'll go even further. Like, I don't watch porn today because if I'm watching porn, I don't notice the waves in my wife's hair. If I'm watching porn, I don't notice her smile. If I'm watching porn, that little sexual energy that we have, that banter when she's maybe making dinner in the kitchen, is not there. If I'm watching porn, I'm less inclined to kiss my wife. And I'll be honest with you, if I'm watching porn, sex is not nearly as enjoyable because I'm so fucking charged up in my head, I'm not present for the experience. And so when you talk about pornography robbing of your manhood, but your ability to show up as a healthy man in relationships, what's the price tag on that?
Amen, buddy. Beautiful. Steve, you mentioned it earlier, and I absolutely agree with you about that last relapse you've had, going to emotional recall, basically the porn hub in your brain, and that it is a gateway. It's a gateway drug. Can you talk to listeners why porn's a gateway drug to other things, please?
Here's what I believe to be true, and science kind of supports this, right? So porn addiction works off the same part of the brain as drug addiction, that kind of dopamine reward system. And so what happens is people need to, I needed to watch porn with more frequency to get that same high. I started to take more risks on where I was watching that porn to get that same high. And then all of a sudden, like these lines in the sand that you said you would never, ever, ever, ever cross get washed away. Because what happens? All of a sudden, porn's not enough. And where guys go, maybe they go to OnlyFans. And then maybe they're dealing with cam girls. And then all of a sudden they're on an escort website. I never, ever would reach out to an escort. And all of a sudden they're texting an escort. And there's just this progression, just like with drug addiction, where you need more drugs and different types of drugs to get the same high. The same thing exists with compulsive sexual behaviors. And pornography is kind of at the root of so much of this.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, I know for a lot of listeners are want to go like, how did this guy go from being with, let's call it that last episode, at 3 different sites doing really strong drugs, having all kinds of different people, being physical with, and something that he did not want to do. How did he forgive himself? How did he move on? How did he say, that's not who I am anymore? Could you walk the audience through? Because I know that was not an easy task for you.
No, it still isn't an easy task. And so the process of forgiveness takes time. For me, step 1, I had to stop engaging in behaviors that weren't in alignment with my values. There was this process of I just had to make a living amends to myself. And that was the first step. And, it's interesting. Sometimes I drift into remorse. I don't do it with much frequency. Like, I can't believe all the money I gave away. I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I hurt my family. But here's the deal. If I had $1 more, $1, that might have been, I might have bought Coke with it. And that might have been the line that killed me. If I had $1 more, I might not have met my wife. If I had $1 more, I might not have launched Valor Recovery. So God is or God isn't. And I had to get to a point where I had to accept that my path was my path. I got to a place where I accepted that I went through everything I went through for a reason. It wasn't clear to me then what the reason was. It's getting more clear today what that reason is. But I went through everything preparing me for this moment in time. And so there's a purpose to everything.
Yeah.
And I have this incredible ability right now to turn all that pain into purpose. My journey to hell and back is my gift. Somehow I survived. My job is to make the most of it. This chance I've been given.
And you're doing it. That a boy, buddy. Stever, what's right now, somebody listening right now, they're feeling trapped by this horrific illness. What's the first step they can do to end this vicious cycle?
Talk about it.
Oh, right on.
Find a place. Just talk about it. There are so much good resources out there today to get help, whether it's therapists specializing in these challenges, whether it's treatment for these challenges, whether it's 12-step recovery, there are online support groups, there are coaching programs, there are programs like Valor Recovery. There's a lot of good stuff out there. But the first step is to have the ability to talk about it with someone. And so the thing that the way you kill shame is shining the light on it and storytelling. And so that's easier said than done, right? Where do you find a safe place to talk about this stuff, right? It's not easy. I get that. But you'd be surprised, fucking people in your friend group. I would not be surprised if you're the only one having similar struggles.
Beautiful. Stever, what are some of the tools or practices you've seen really help men reclaim intimacy, confidence, connection?
Men need other men to be better men. Men need vulnerability role models. Men need to be around other men as it relates to sexual compulsivity to transcend shame. These are progressive conditions that get worse over time, not better if left untreated. And I believe you can't do this alone. Recovery is a team sport. And so, if you hear like porn addiction, whatever label you're throwing at it, is an intimacy disorder at its core, an intimacy disorder, right? And so very naturally, the roadmap to healing has to lay the foundation and tracks for connection and community. I believe men heal best in community with accountability. And so, you don't have to do this alone. And it's so much more fun when you do it together. So from that perspective, I think the power of community and healing is really important. Accountability is really important. Having someone in your life that you can check in with on a daily basis. I like to say like great coaching, right? You think about your Phil Jackson, right? I know you're a Lakers fan, but great coaching is around creating inspiration and motivation for change. It's about teaching new skills and holding someone accountable to practicing those skills so you feel and think differently about yourself over time. And so we change by acting differently. And so what are the behaviors and who can hold you accountable to practicing new behaviors on a daily basis? And so I think accountability is really important. So having people around you to call you on your bullshit, really important, right? And so I think that's really important. I think using filters on your devices is really important. It's not a perfect fix, but I'll tell you what, when you think about how easily accessible porn is on your cell phone, on your laptops, with the click of a button. Dude, it's like in your nervous system as an auto response to dealing with life. Why would you not put a filter on it, at least to create a pause from the thought and the behavior, right? To break this up. So I think filters can be really important in healing. And so I think that's important. And then I think it's also really important, guys can stop watching porn. They have trouble stop watching porn until they really understand why they're watching porn. As much as you think porn is the problem, it's not. It's the solution you're turning to. What's really going on right now for so many young men in particular? It's that boredom. It's that loneliness. It is the kind of frustration they have of being disconnected from society that they're just turning to porn as a way to cope. And so understanding the why, I think, is really important. What keeps bringing you back to porn? And understanding that and learning new tools, especially around, boredom, loneliness, being tired, HALT, you always hear in AA, great acronym, same applies with porn as well. Understanding your why, I think, is really important to making progress, to kind of, getting some recovery in this space.
Well, let's stay with that great theme, Steve, with young men, with porn being more accessible than ever. How do you see this affecting younger generations of men in your practice there?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, break it down, brother.
Oh, my God. Yeah. I'll tell you, it's a real problem. Seano, we have a real problem right now. This is a generation of young men who've grown up with free pornography. It's interesting. We created a program for young men, the Ascend program. I have a porn addiction. I'm an older man. I go work with a therapist like you. Often what's at the root of that is some form of trauma, right? Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse in one's childhood as at the root of addiction. With so many of these young men, they've had kind of really normal upbringings. The trauma is the porn they started watching at 10 years old. That's the trauma. And what has happened, Seano, is because of the ease and accessibility of it, this is a generation of young men who have used pornography and social media to regulate their emotions. Feeling sad, click a button. Feeling angry, click a button. Feeling anything, click a button. And so it is a real problem. It's very well documented right now that we're dealing with a loneliness epidemic in this country, and our young men are in trouble. I think I wrote the stats down here. What numbers? Men are 3 times more likely, young men, 3 times more likely to be addicted, 4 times more likely to kill themselves, and 12 times more likely to be incarcerated. So this generation of young men have never been more lonely. They're skyrocketing rates of anxiety and depression, and they're not doing well. They're being so outperformed by their female counterparts. Now, that's amazing for women. No, not the women at all. I mean, kudos. But these younger men, this generation, they're not doing well. They're not dating. I mean, look at these stats right here. 45% of men under the age of 30 have experienced porn-induced erectile dysfunction. 2 out of 3 men under the age of 30 are not in a romantic relationship. 33% of men under the age of 30 have not had sex in the last year. And so when you just think about these dynamics, it's pretty scary. And so you got a generation of young men that are really vulnerable. They're really lonely. And what's really unfortunate, Seano, they're so vulnerable to these kind of social media personalities that conflate masculinity with toxicity. They're very vulnerable. They're not evolving into healthy men. And porn is not the only problem. Social media is a big issue. And there are a lot of other things that are feeding this as well. Remote work is not good for these young guys. Not having an office to go to, not having mentors in the workplace, not having the structure of going to work. They're at home all day long. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces with this, but pornography is not serving this younger generation. And so it's a real issue. It's fascinating. You get a 22-year-old kid coming to our program right now who's been watching porn for the last 12 years. And literally, it's like stopping watching porn is like coming off heroin.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, Steve. Let's talk about the detox off that.
Oh, fucking brutal for these kids, dude. They've been watching porn daily, most of them, for years upon years. And there absolutely is a physical detox coming off of pornography that makes it really hard not to return to it. And so a big part of the work that we do is just being hyper vigilant with these younger guys coming into the program so they can get some traction. That's why not having filters on your devices, having accountability partners, having resources that you can call in real time are so critical, because the desire to watch porn will come back with a vengeance, because that's all you know.
Interesting. Steve, I think you'll appreciate this and understand that this really broke my case. It's a case I had recently. A young man, a sweetheart of a kid, was arrested for sexual assault. And as I'm learning more about the case, his pornography addiction was so progressive from 11 to 17. He thought this was the way all women wanted to have sex, was rough sex. And he didn't know. And he thought, that he was just doing like a role play. He thought, and she's like, he didn't know. And this is real. It's a real epidemic, man. And I appreciate you talking about that. But that being said, what should fathers be talking to their kids about right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. As a new father, these are things I think about. If you don't talk to your kids about porn and sex, or if you don't teach your kids about these topics, porn will. And so we've got to take the stigma away from this. Think about the type of porn that's out there for these kids to see. I mean, the rape porn, the threesome porn, the gangbang porn. Like, what the fuck is that? I mean, you can't process that at 11 or 12 years old. And putting all the body image things in addition to that, and it's like, I believe that there has to be, it's so interesting. People are like, well, you have a position on porn and, porn. I don't know, dude. All I know is it doesn't work in my life. And I haven't seen it work in a lot of people's lives right now. And so, this grassroots movement early on, just educating people, young adults, teenagers, about the truth about porn. Just the truth behind it, about, who are these actors? These are actors that are probably, high on drugs. They've been sexually abused themselves. They've been trafficked themselves. This ain't so fucking sexy when you actually see what it is and learn about it. And so we've got to be out there telling this story around, the truth about pornography. And I just think more needs to be done.
Great.
And by the way, it's not just porn, go on Instagram, go on X, go on Facebook, and the explicit videos on these social media websites is profound.
Theo, what do you say to someone who feels they'll never be able to live without it?
I get it. I get it. I mean, you gotta be
me too. Yeah, me too.
Me too. 100%. And I said, it's like, maybe we just got to figure out how to get to tomorrow without it. You know what I'm saying? And just maybe that's the case. Let's shrink this thing down. And you can do anything for one day.
Yeah.
Let's worry about tomorrow.
Beautiful. Yeah, right on. See, if you could send one message directly to men listening right now who carry this secret right now, who are deep in the throes of addiction, what's the message you want to deliver to them right now?
You don't have to do this alone. You don't. There's a better way to live, and it's possible. And I promise you, if I can do it, you can do it.
Beautiful. And let's end this episode with a love story.
Mm-hmm.
You're a father. You have a beautiful wife. She's a big part of your recovery. You guys are in this together, right? I mean, what's that been like for you, man?
It's been incredible. It's been incredible. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. It wasn't a coincidence that we met. both of us had to go through what we went through to meet each other at a time in our lives when we did. And it's been this incredible, profound love story. And it just clicked. And we have so much love to give each other. It is just the best thing that's ever happened to me. And it turns out I'm a really good husband. I'm a really good man. I take a lot of pride in loving my wife and honoring my wife and respecting my wife and giving her and showing her the love that she deserves.
That's beautiful, buddy. Boy, I felt that and I believe it.
Yeah, it's true.
I know it's true. I know it's true. How can people find you, Steve, in your incredible program?
Sure, they can, they can our website, valorrecoverycoaching.com. And, there's a lot of information about who we are, the work we do. And, feel free to, if you want to reach out and talk to me, happy to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say there's nobody better in America right now to address this than you. And if you're struggling with porno addiction, please call them. I believe in Steve. I believe in his mission. And he knows the game. You will get love. You will get non-judgment. He will give you a roadmap, and he will give you a solution, and take advantage of his wisdom. Thanks, Steve, for being on the show, brother. Godspeed. God bless, man.
Thanks for having me, Seano.
Well, this is incredible. Thank you, buddy. The Seano Show is a production of iHeart Podcasts, hosted by me, Seano McFarlane, produced by Pod People and 28th Ave. Our lead producer is Keith Cornelick. Our executive producer is Lindsay Hoffman. Marketing lead is Ashley Weaver. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week.